Okay, so now we have Tom Shields, and he is the Deputy Director of the Right-of-Way Production, and he will be discussing the updates to the PPM and regarding to the right-of-way. Tom?
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Tom Shields, Deputy Director of Right-of-Way Production, and I work here in Central Office. I wanted to just cover with you some of the changes that we've made in Chapter 12 of Volume 1 of the Plans Preparation Manual. By way of a little bit of background, I was approached by Assistant Secretary Blanchard and given the marching orders to put together a task team to look at the way the districts handle the use of temporary construction easements and license agreements. Also, given the objective that we would try to move toward CPR as best we could, realizing that there wasn't necessarily a silver bullet or a one-size-fits-all type of decision-making process, but wanted us to look at drawing more consistency in the use of these two avenues by the districts. Pulled together a task team of 9 people, one from each one of the districts, and each person is from right-of-way. It ranges anywhere from a deputy right-of-way manager to the actual right-of-way manager themselves. At our first meeting, we looked at the various avenues that a district might use to gain rights of entry to properties. And on some of these, I realize I may be preaching to the choir, just bear with me, but I'll try to keep us all on the same page. There was use of temporary construction easements when we just needed to temporarily get on a piece of private property in order to construct the project. Also, use of permanent easements. I'm going to go ahead and open this click to this next item as well. Permanent easements for harmonizing. Typically, your permanent easements are obviously used for drainage and things of that nature, lateral support, whatever. But these two items, permanent easements and permanent easements for harmonizing, were also used because of some issues we ran into in District 5 and I think a couple other districts where construction was delayed for whatever reason, and where we had purchased temporary construction easements, those easements ran out of time. They were typically 3 to 5 years. They ran out of time, and so the districts went back and had started purchasing more permanent property rights in order to make sure that we had those rights in hand when it came around to time to build a project. Also, what the districts would use are license agreements, just gaining rights of entry and dealing with driveways, also removing damaged structures and things of that nature, and also the driveway connection permits. And I believe this goes in connection with the Florida Administrative Code Rule 1496, sections 1496. .011 and .015. We turned our attention in Chapter 12 to the definitions, and we just wanted to tighten them up a little bit. We had a general agreement by all the task team members that use of a temporary construction easement is an actual, we are temporarily encumbering a property right. And it is requisite of the project that we have to have it in order to construct the project, and also in situations where we may be impacting a property through a grade change to where tying in that driveway with a reasonable slope on the access, that slope may go back into areas of a property that could possibly obstruct parking or on-site maneuvering or even structural improvements. In some of those cases, although that property or that driveway isn't requisite of the project itself, it's still the actual act of reconnecting the property can cause a impact to that remaining property. In those cases, you may want to employ the use of a temporary construction easement. So we made those revisions to that definition. Just looking at some characteristics of a temporary easement, it is needed for construction of the project. And even with that, there was a little bit of difference between the district's interpretation of what was needed. And we've worked on trying to hammer that out. But nevertheless, the temporary easement is needed, and it could require testimony by a department engineer as to necessity. It is a condemnable property right and requires full compensation under state and federal law. It falls under Chapter 73 of the Florida statute and affords the property owner specific rights. And I think, to me, what's most definitive there is that it's an acquisition we can't walk away from. We have to have it. If we can't negotiate it, we'll actually condemn the property, condemn that right. Then we started looking at the license agreement. We felt like the definition there was adequate. And to me, what was really significant here is that second sentence that says this work is solely for the benefit of the property owner. Everybody was in agreement with that, and this is some of the characteristics I can go through. It's not needed for construction, operation, or maintenance of the project. It's not a property right. All this is a piece of paper and a consent from the owner that either person can void at any time. The work is done solely for the benefit of the property owner, and that last test is that we can walk away from it. If a property owner doesn't give us permission to go on their property to reconnect a driveway, we can walk away from it. I don't want to go line by line on what the revisions were that we made to Chapter 12, but I'd just like to kind of umbrella them, if I may. We first, as I said, we went to the definitions, just tried to tighten them up a little bit. There's a couple other minor tweaks that we put in there, but primarily focused on the definition for temporary easements and the license agreement. We also emphasized the importance of a joint field review between the appropriate offices, in this case, namely the design, right-of-way, and right-of-way mapping. Not necessarily on every project, but on some of those that may present some unique circumstances where we're dealing with grade changes, access issues, or whatever. A joint field review is well worth its time. We also looked at clarifying some considerations when dealing with driveways, specifically driveways. Also added language emphasizing the need for close coordination between design, right-of-way, and right-of-way mapping in the decision-making process. And then finally, why is that not changing? Okay. We also looked at adding some clarity to considerations when deciding which process to follow, whether it's a license agreement, temporary construction easement, or any one of the other four that I had covered earlier. Now there has been a new task team formed to look at specifically two areas. One is a little bit redundant from the mission of this task team, but we're also, in this next, we're also looking at innovations there we go, innovative ideas in the process of obtaining rights of entry. Specifically, we've been focusing on some of the processes that District 5 have in place, and using driveway permits, functioning under that Rule 1496, and in areas where we may be in other districts purchasing temporary construction easements, District 5 has been successful in working through driveway permits and or in some cases those permitted easements. But the task team is currently underway. As a matter of fact, it's been going for about 3 months. And part of the mission was also to open up dialogue with the districts and try to build even further consistency when we use temporary easements and license agreements, and making the decision on which is the most appropriate path to take. These are the members of the team. We've added a few outside of right-of-way, like Richard Creed out of District 4 in design, Ron Chin, design out of District 7, Marty Hernandez in legal, District 7, and Fred Lucet, Chief Counsel in District 5. We have a meeting, face-to-face meeting scheduled for March 11th. And the takeaway from that meeting, hopefully, will be a draft of the recommendation that's coming out of the team on some innovative ways to address rights of entry. That hasn't been put together yet, so I'm not at a point where I can necessarily share that. But hopefully, we will have a good takeaway from that meeting, and we will be presenting that to Secretary Blanchard. And then hopefully onto the district transportation development directors and the district secretaries. That's all that I have, and I don't know if we have time for any questions. Thank you.